Who else has a bajillion and one cans of canned chicken in their cabinets and don't know how to use it because nobody wants to eat it because it tastes like canned chicken? I went to my local Walmart to find ways to transform my canned chicken into things that were actually really edible. In fact, not just edible, downright enjoyable to eat. For anyone with just a Dollar Tree near you, I also included a list for the Dollar Tree in case that is where you are going to shop. The main trick I have found with canned chicken is that the longer you let it sit outside the can, the less like the can it tastes. So if you sit it in the fridge with a marinade on it for a night or 2 nights, then it's going to taste a lot better once you make it up. The cans of chicken I had on hand were much bigger than any that you would find at the Dollar Tree, so I actually went ahead and measured everything out so that it would be the exact amount you would get at the Dollar Tree. And we even had a leftover bowl of broth and a little bit of chicken. I did end up using it in a soup I made later this week. We're going to start off with our 3 bowls of chicken and 3 different marinades. First, we're going to start with a sweet and spicy barbecue sauce. Now, this is the barbecue sauce I had on hand, but you can use whatever barbecue sauce you like. You could even use a low-carb barbecue sauce to make this a little lower on the carbs. I put in 1/4 a cup of barbecue sauce into my 5 ounces of chicken, and I even added a little dash of Worcestershire just to add a little bit of a smoky flavor. You could also add a little bit of garlic powder or onion powder or even some red pepper flakes to spice it up. Next, we're making a Thai curry chicken. First, we're going to use coconut milk, ginger, turmeric, curry, and soy sauce. I did want to say I put the links for the recipes or the recipes themselves in the description down below. I put in a tablespoon of curry powder, a teaspoon of ginger, a teaspoon of turmeric, and 2 teaspoons of soy sauce, as well as my can of coconut milk. Oh, and I dropped the ginger. Then I gave the bowl a good mix, then I put saran wrap over the top and put them in the fridge. I did this with each of the marinades just so that it would seal in all the flavors and stay fresh. Now we're starting the marinade for our chicken croquettes. I'm not sure how you say it, but for this you're using an egg, Dijon mustard, you can use any mustard, salt, garlic powder, onion powder, pepper, and thyme. And I used all of these seasonings. You don't have to use all the seasonings. I know this recipe and the others in this video are a little heavy on the seasonings, but if you have them on hand, great. If you don't, it will be okay. One thing I wanted to mention was that my egg utilization for this video was not great. I only used 1 of the 6 eggs that we would have needed to buy for this meal, and that's because I had a 4th recipe originally planned, but as I was doing the math, the recipe would have cost way more than I would have wanted to spend for a budget meal video. I figured the extra eggs will always come in handy and can be a great source of protein just on their own. It is now the next day and we're going to start one of our bases for all 3 of our recipes are going to use a little bit of this dough. So we're making a basic dough. I'm using a bread maker. You can just use a bowl if that's all you have, but you're going to want a cup of warm water, 2.5 teaspoons of yeast, and a tablespoon of sugar if you have it. If not, a tablespoon of flour works, and 3 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, and you're going to end up with a nice dough like this, which I divided into 3s. My first third of the dough, I went ahead and rolled into little yeast rolls that we're going to let rise on our sheet pan and cook for one of our meals. Shockingly enough, I was going to put this with the chicken croquette meal and I kind of forgot to include them in the end result pictures, but we did have them on hand and I just kind of flaked on adding them in the picture. I'm adding this crisscross design on top just for fun, not really for any real reason other than for design sakes. Now that we have our yeast rolls rising, we're going to start on our barbecue bun recipe. These are a bit like a pulled pork sandwich except for with chicken, and the bun completely covers, which makes it kind of friendly for kids because it's not as big of a mess. You're going to divide up your dough, flatten them out into those little flat rounds that you saw. Then in a separate pan, you are going to heat up your barbecue chicken and add in 1/4 cup of onion and 1/4 cup of chopped up green pepper and heat it until it's well heated through and starting to soften up. Next, you're going to scoop about 2 tablespoons of the mixture into the center of each of those little rolls, and you're going to pull those sides out so that you have a wider surface area and then over. So that way you're going to wrap it around without it tearing. The first one I did actually tore, and you're going to see it on the sheet in a second, It's fine. It actually didn't leak either, so that was pretty cool. After you stretch the dough out, you are going to pinch it shut, and I like to roll them so that the seam side was down, but you could have it any way you like. Now you're going to do the same thing with the remaining buns, and you should have about 4 big buns left. I added some sesame seeds on top. You could not do this if you don't feel like it. They didn't really want to stick anyway, because normally I think you put an egg wash or something on top, but which I could have done. I did have eggs for it, but I thought about it after I finished making the video, so there's that. I baked these in an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes, and they came out golden brown and light and fluffy. During the last few minutes, I went ahead and steamed my bag of corn, added a little bit of butter, salt, and pepper, and then plated up the meal. You could add canned green beans, or even some baked beans would go really well with this meal. The buns stayed together really nicely. I would say that they needed a little more barbecue sauce. I wouldn't add it in the middle, otherwise it will get soggy, but I added it on the side as an option for dipping. These were light, airy, and really delicious. They stayed together so nicely, and the added barbecue sauce was just the touch it needed for a little extra pump in the flavor. If you had it on hand, a little bit of shredded cheese would take it to the next level. I know we like to use cheese a lot, so I tried to make this a little more dairy-free friendly, but it would really taste good in it. Another shortcut for these would be to use crescent roll dough or biscuit dough instead of making the dough yourself. If you're shopping at the Dollar Tree or Dollar General, you could use a Bisquick mix. Next up, we're going to make this delicious coconut Thai curry with fresh naan that we've made ourselves. I'm starting off by heating up a pot with our coconut curry chicken mixture in it. While it started heating up, I went ahead and added about 1/4 cup of chopped up onion and 1/4 cup of that chopped up green pepper. I also went ahead and chopped up our mango and added that. If you're wondering how to pick a good mango, you look for this little ridge on the top of the mango. That's a great indicator that the mango is going to be a sweet mango. Also, you're going to look for a little bit of red if you're wanting a sweeter, more ripe mango, and if you want a more sour tart mango, you're going to want it to be greener. I wound up only using 1/2 of the mango in this recipe because it was so good I wanted to eat the rest, which I did. It was delicious. I added all this to my pot and let it heat through. I also added a pinch of red pepper flakes for a little bit more heat, some salt, and a little bit of this lemon juice. You could also add vinegar just to add a little acidity to the mix. Of course, this is all optional. For our naan, I took that third section of dough, divided it into about 5 balls, then rolled them out flat into naan-shaped pieces. Then I heated this pan on medium heat and stuck them in this unoiled pan and just flipped them every 30 seconds or so until some bubbles started forming and it sprung back to the touch. And it also was a light golden brown. I added some butter on the top just to help it add a little extra flavor, and it turned out beautifully. As you can see, it's very flexible. I let them kind of steam on each other and just kind of piled them one on top of each other. That way they stayed really soft and spongy so that you can scoop up your curry with them. I garnished the plate with a little bit of mango and some of the peppers, and I put a little bit of cilantro on top from one of our last budget meal videos, which I'll add at the end if you would like to go watch it. This curry turned out delicious, flavorful, and you definitely could not tell that it was using canned chicken. Our third recipe we're making are these chicken croquettes, or chicken nuggets if you just want to say it a little easier. First, I took a pan and I filled it with a little bit of oil, about 1/4 inch. I let that pan start heating through on medium heat while I finished our chicken croquette mixture. I took 2 tablespoons of breadcrumbs and added it to our chicken mixture, then stirred it until it was mixed thoroughly. I also went ahead and started on our mashed potatoes. I used this garlic mashed potatoes. You can use whatever mashed potatoes you would like, or even fresh potatoes if you would rather. I just made it according to the package directions, which said to add it to 2 cups of boiling hot water, stir, and then fluff after about 5 minutes. For our chicken croquettes, in a separate little bowl, I added about 1/4 a cup of the breadcrumbs that we had on hand. Then I scooped about a tablespoon worth of the mixture into the breadcrumbs and coated, then added to the hot oil. I started out with smaller nuggets just because I was curious how it would taste or if I would need to tweak the recipe. I didn't end up needing to tweak the recipe and they tasted delicious. So I just made them a little bigger and I kept them flat, kind of like McDonald's nuggets, because I felt like they would cook more thoroughly that way. And these were delightful. I think this was my favorite out of all 3 of the recipes. I didn't even know you could make chicken nuggets this way. So I highly recommend this one. Once they got golden brown on one side, I went ahead and flipped them to the other side. You can see they turned a nice golden brown in this oil. And once they were golden brown on both sides, I went ahead and transferred them to a paper towel just to kind of drain off a little bit of the excess oil. Once the nuggets were done, I went ahead and started plating up. I used some of that same corn with a little butter, a little salt and pepper on it. I added in our mashed potatoes as another side option, and then a good helping of those chicken croquettes, and man was this good. I also added a little bit of parsley flakes on top just for added pop of color. I love a good garnish, but I know not everybody wants a little green flakes of things on their food, but I think it looks gorgeous. These were so delicious, so flavorful, and the outside was so crisp. It really reminded me a lot of McDonald's chicken nuggets, and I think that's because McDonald's chicken nuggets do use small bits of chicken and not a whole piece of chicken, and they probably also have some fillers like those breadcrumbs. So this really reminded me of those. I think it would be a kid pleaser for sure. For more budget meal inspiration, check out the video I've got on screen. Until the next video, I'll see you on the comments. Thanks for watching.